Okay. All right. We are live. Andy is joining us here. Bernie McGurl is with us. Uh, Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bobby Hughes. I'm the Executive Director for the Eastern Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation, and I'm your host today with my co-host, Andy McAllister from the Western Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation, and our guest here, Bernie McGurl with the Lackawanna River Conservation Association. I want to tell you about the Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles. It's a sort of a one-of-a-kind podcast that has been conversing with passionate community leaders and community-minded partners that have been highlighting, outstanding reclamation and community cleanup efforts and showcasing and discussions around stream improvement projects and sharing emergent ideas and technologies and their efforts to reclaim and remediate our legacy abandoned mines across Pennsylvania. And this afternoon here, we've got our special guest, Bernie McGurl, and Andy's going to kind of get a lead into the discussions here, but I'll turn it over to Andy, and we welcome Bernie to the podcast.
Thanks, Bobby. I want to apologize for any difficulties on my connection from my end. So if I kind of blink out based on my lousy connection, Bobby will take over until I can get back in again. First, we have to thank the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds for underwriting the first 12 episodes of the Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles podcast. The first 5 episodes have already been archived on YouTube channels, and we're hopeful that live streaming personal interviews and discussing timely topics related to abandoned mine reclamation engage our audiences on a different level. And so feel free to put your questions and comments into the comments box of whatever platform you're joining us from, and that way we'll try to incorporate those questions along the way. Okay, Bobby.
All right. Well, first, I'd like to introduce here and take a few minutes, really, before we get into discussions with Bernie about his background and give you a little indication of some of the tremendous amount of work that he's done in northeastern Pennsylvania. Bernie McGurl is a fourth-generation native of northeastern PA, and he resides in Scranton. Scranton? We say Scranton around here. He retired as the executive director for the Lackawanna River Conservation Association at the end of 2023, having served there in that position since 1991, when I was just graduating high school. He co-founded the LRCA in 1987 with a group of community volunteers and served in a volunteer capacity as the president of LRCA from 1989 up through 1991. He also served with the former Department of Environmental Resources in the Bureau of State Parks, and later with the Bureau of Forestry in 1970 to 72. And between 73 and 75, he worked for the railroad industry with the Sperry Rail Service and the Erie-Lackawanna Railroad. He worked with various roles and capacities in the construction industry as well from 1976 up through 1991. Bernie's work with LRCA included collaborations with different consultants, Hoffman, Williams, Laughlin, and Fletcher, to develop the Lackawanna River Citizens Master Plan in 1988 and 89. And he also participated in the development of the plan for the Lackawanna Heritage Valley in 1990. He collaborated with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to produce a reconnaissance study for the Lackawanna River Greenway in 1993. He's directed the development of the Lackawanna River Watershed Conservation Plan in 2001. And he's collaborated with the development of the Luzerne-Lackawanna Open Space Recreation and Conservation Plan in 2003. He collaborated with several other LRC directors in 95 to incorporate the Lackawanna Valley Conservancy as an affiliated nonprofit land trust that had a mission to work with LRCA to acquire and conserve land and water resources within the 350 square mile area of the Lackawanna River watershed. And since that time, the LVC has acquired over 500 acres of land along the river and tributary streams. This includes several reaches of abandoned railroad right-of-ways that have been acquired through donations and purchase to facilitate development of several sections of the Lackawanna River Heritage Trail. And the LBC owns several parcels of abandoned mine lands and a Superfund site. Between 2010 and 2013, he collaborated with LRCA, our coalition here at EPCAMR, and the Susquehanna River Basin Commission to develop the Lower Lackawanna River Watershed Restoration Assessment Plan that we called a RAP. And that plan evaluated the flow volumes and the hydrology of the Old Forge borehole and the Duryea breach, AMD systems, and that together discharge over 100 million gallons of mine drainage per day into the Lackawanna River near its confluence with the North Branch of the Susquehanna River, about 3 miles upstream in Old Forge. During 2018 through 2022, he managed LRCA to the work there to produce conservation plans for both Roaring Brook and Leggett's Creek, two of the larger tributaries of the Lackawanna River. And in 2022, he led the work to produce a plan for the North Scranton riverfront along a mile stretch of the river impacted with urban blight and brownfields contaminants along the riverbanks. His academic background includes undergraduate studies in political science and public administration at the University of Scranton and the humanities at Keystone College. He also attended Johnson College studying the construction trades. He presently serves on the board of the United Neighborhood Centers, the Rail Trail Council of Northeast PA, and of course EPCAMR. All from there's a NEPA article that mentions Bernie, and it says that Bernie's a proud Dunmore native. He came of age as NEPA's coal mines and rail industry neared their end. When not outside from sun up to sundown, young Bernie attended St. Mary's Elementary and later walked the first graduating class from Dunmore Central Catholic, that's now Holy Cross. From there, he attended the University of Scranton, Keystone College, and Johnson College, and cut his teeth as a carpenter and firefighter for the Bureau of Forestry. And in 72, when Hurricane Agnes came along, that drew him back near the water. Happens to be the year that drew me into the water and into this earth on the day of the flood. So it goes back, we go back a long time here. He volunteered to keep the rise in Susquehanna at bay, and after it breached the levees, he got to work helping Wilkes-Barre rebuild. He railroaded for a stint in the Midwest via the Norfolk Southern, and made his way back home to the Erie Lackawanna. And here the rambling stopped. He planted his roots. He looked up on the Lackawanna River, its rotten smell, the sewage, and decades of careless industrial waste and mine drainage, and he decided to do something about it. He's well known for his work as the executive director for LRCA. He's helped to develop the Lackawanna Heritage Trail and to get the Steamtown National Historic Site up and running. And he's played a crucial role in founding the Lackawanna Valley Heritage Authority and many other nonprofits. And today, in his mid-70s, he scaled back a bit, not much it seems, but a bit. And he has a new role now as a project manager and senior advisor and project person for LRCA. So, with that, we really welcome Bernie. And it's worth taking the time to mention all the efforts that you've done over your career here. And we want to welcome you to the podcast.
Definitely welcome,
Robert.
Bernie. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, it's good to join Robert and Andy. It's good to join you guys. And
we want to get to know our guests on a personal level. So let's allow all the viewers to let's get to know you a little bit better. Some questions that came to mind. Where did you grow up? Where are you from now? And tell us about your family.
Okay. Well, as Robert mentioned in his comments, I grew up in Dunmore, Pennsylvania, which is sort of the Brooklyn of Scranton. It's right next door, and I live in the hill section of Scranton right now. So I didn't go too far from where I grew up, but I did a lot of traveling in my earlier life in the 60s, 70s. Spent some time in Europe, Mexico, and California, and I always ended up coming back here. So I sort of got permanent and bought a home in the hill section in 1985, and been put down my roots and been here ever since. My my family goes back a long time in Lackawanna County. On my father's side, they came over from Ireland. They saw the handwriting on the wall, and my great grandparents came over in 1840 before the potato famine, and settled up in Jessup. And my mom's family came over in the 1860s and settled in Dunmore. So by the turn of the 20th century, both sides of the family had made a little bit of money and got themselves educated and situated in Jessup and Dunmore. On my dad's side of the family, they were coal miners, and my father's father, my grandfather, was hoisting engineer at Mount Pleasant Colliery up in Jessup, and he ran the elevator on the cars on the slope. And later he became postmaster Jessup Borough. I got a certificate signed by President Roosevelt in 1908, giving my grandfather the postmastership in Jessup. On my mom's side of the family, my great grandfather was a mining engineer, and they had mines up on along Roaring Brook in where the Naples Auto Parts facility is today, and up under where the Interstate 80 and 84 and 380, the big junction of the interstates, when they were digging out the grades for the interstate improvement with the Casey Highway project there, they actually excavated down into my great-grandfather's mine. I remember getting to look down and see a couple of the tunnel openings. He was also involved with some partners and ran some of the mines in the semi-anthracite area up in Sullivan County around Lopez and Bernice at the turn of the century. So yeah, we go back a long time, and so I grew up with that stories of the mines and gravity railroads and picking huckleberries up on Music Mountain and all that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna Vern with you got a pretty interesting mix of trades, and with your educational background. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and like how your training in construction and the education you received in like political science and public admin really kind of prepared you for your career in the environmental nonprofit arena? Did that happen when you were in college or when you were doing the trades, or did it happen, as an outgrowth of you in your childhood?
Yeah, I think it was more just growing up with the legacy that I had in my family. My dad was a professor of literature at the University of Scranton. He was a local historian involved with the Lackawanna Historical Society, and he would be volunteering down at the Catlin House at the Lackawanna Historical Society. And when I was a kid, I'd go down there with them on a Saturday afternoon, and he'd be working on a project with some of the other members to put a program together, doing research on. And I had the run of the collection, so I spent an enormous amount of time when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old in the library at the Catlin House, just pulling one book off the shelf after another, poring over it, reading it, looking at the maps, asking questions of my dad and some of the other volunteers. And I learned a lot about the history of Lackawanna County, the history of railroading, the history of coal mining and steel making, iron and steel industry that brought the Scranton family here to develop the development of the gravity railroads with the Delaware and Hudson Canal, and the Pennsylvania Coal Company and their gravity railroads down to between Pittston and Dunmore and Honesdale and Hawley. So that was my genesis, I think. I remember watershed wise, the hurricanes of 1954 and 1955, Hurricane Hazel 54 and Diane at 55, they were big eye openers for me as far as watersheds go. But prior to that, I think I was probably 2.5, 3 years old, and getting a bath and one Saturday night and pulled the plug to drain the tub, and I asked my mom, where's the water go, Mom? And she explained to me it went down a pipe under the house and out under the street and down the street, and it poured into the Lackawanna River. And I said, oh, all that stuff from our tub and toilet go into the river? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, where does the Lackawanna River go? She told me it went into the Susquehanna River down near Pittston. And I said, where's the Susquehanna go? And she said, it goes down all the way through Pennsylvania into Maryland. And it goes into a big, beautiful bay called the Chesapeake Bay. So I had a watershed awareness, I think, when I was 3 years old. And it was only reinforced by some of the things I learned, in my other early years, growing up into a teenager. And then when I got into college, I really didn't have any, context. It was a crazy period, the late 60s, early 70s. But I think I always had it in the back of my head. I think in my political science and public administration studies, I sort of looked at criminal justice, and I was into different aspects of the criminal justice studies, and I got intrigued by obviously remembering the Knox mine disaster and other things, and the demise of the coal industry in the 1960s. I started getting into doing some academic papers on Project Leviticus, which was an operation of the United States Department of Justice in the late 1960s and into the early 70s and 80s. That was associated with the trying to figure out what was up with the advance of criminology, criminal activities in the anthracite coal industry, the infiltration of organized crime, and the development of the Great American Coal Company, the Blue Coal bankruptcy, which was the largest bankruptcy ever filed in the Middle District of Pennsylvania. And it took the feds under the bankruptcy trustees that were appointed by the court to about 25 years or more to adjudicate the Blue Coal bankruptcy. And it just had thousands and thousands of acres of abandoned mine land in Lackawanna and Luzerne counties tied up in litigation and for all that time. And then, gradually the development of the Earth Conservancy with the former Congressman Paul Kanjorski helped to adjudicate it down there. And then the parcels were sold off to investors up in Lackawanna County. So I got interested in it from a public policy standpoint there. And all the while I was basically going to school part-time and working as a building contractor and raising family. And it just sort of happened. I got involved as a volunteer with the beginning of the LRCA in 1986 and 87.
Interesting. Robert, if you don't mind, I'll have a question here. Bernie, who was one of your mentors as you were growing up?
Mm-hmm. Well, I lost my dad in 1969. He passed on much too soon, and I sort of had to become I knew I couldn't become my father. I wasn't ready to fill his big shoes. But I was fortunate enough that I had two parents who loved one another very much and who were great parents to myself and my two brothers. So I had a great emotional and intellectual foundation from his legacy. But I had to sort of become my I'm the oldest child, but I was always looking for an older brother out there. And during my college years, about that time, I got very fortunate and won an enormous prize, I guess you could say. I got a real high number in the draft lottery. So I didn't have to worry about being drafted. I was 1A for a while, and I got a deferment when I was in college the first couple of years. But then with the lottery, I was up in the I think it was up around 239 or so in the number. So so I just looked around, and one of my buddies, a couple years older, a student, Lou Corbett, from Newark, New Jersey originally. Lou and I both had Triumph TR. He had a TR6. I had a TR4A sports cars. They were both British Racing Green. So we sort of bumped into one another with these British sports cars that we had and became friends. And mine ended up a few years later spinning out in a snowdrift, but it recovered. And his ended up in a bayou down in Louisiana. It didn't recover from that. But I learned a lot from Lou. And I think that's where I became a nonprofit junkie. A year or two after college, he was here and there, and when he was back in town one time, we were into organic food and stuff. So we decided he couldn't get the kind of food that we wanted to have, so we started a food co-op. So that was my introduction to the nonprofit world in 72, 73, 74. And then about that time also, another really good friend of mine, Guy Bay. I think, Bobby, you remember Guy. He was
I do.
He was property manager for Pennsylvania Gas and Water Company and managed all the watershed lands of that later became the Theta lands. And yep. Guy was an early volunteer and board member of the LRCA, and he actually, his knowledge of land, he was a registered land surveyor, and he was one of the impetuses on the board to help to create the Lackawanna Valley Conservancy in 1994 and 95. But I learned a lot from Guy, and I would always count on his advice. He was very, very quiet, deliberative, but decisive influence, and had a great sense of humor. And they're both gone, but I miss them both. But I think I learned a lot from both of those gentlemen, and I had a lot of other mentors over the years too. I mentioned John McDonald, Brigadier General John McDonald, very noted fellow in the political and community scene in Scranton, and a gentleman named Henry Frashoni. Henry was developer of modular home manufacturing company. So I learned a lot from those guys too, serving on nonprofit boards in the community over the years.
That's good. Andy, maybe before you
Now
go ahead.
Yeah, let's look at that question, Robert. Can everybody see the question down there? It says, how do we balance mine reclamation efforts with current developments in the valley? I would love to see a balance for truth, including the restoration of Eddy Creek to its normal flow. Any comments on that?
Definitely. And John, I've been meaning to reach out to you. I know you called the office a little bit before Christmas and with the holidays, and there was some personal stuff going on with my family. I'll get into it when we talk later. But you're definitely on my list of people to talk with in the new year. And the restoration of Eddy Creek is one of the top priorities for the LRCA. We've been collaborating with the Bureau of Mine Reclamation, and we'll be talking further with you about it. But we're really excited that the project was sort of in the doldrums for many years. And I reached out after some conversations with my board members and our new director, Tara. I reached out to BAMR about a year and a half ago, and we've been facilitating some discussions with them. And I'll be sharing more details on that when we get to talk soon. But for those across the region or across statewide that might be looking at seeing this podcast, Eddy Creek is one of the many beautiful tributaries of the Lackawanna River. The water from Eddy Creek never gets off Moosic Mountain to get to the Lackawanna River. It infiltrates completely into the underground coal mines underneath the valley. There's a big hole in the creek bed up in the Marshwood area near the Casey Highway interchange. And all that water from Eddy Creek comes out into the river in the borehole. And when we get Eddy Creek restored and sealed, that'll probably reduce about 5 or 10% of the flow coming out of the borehole in Old Forge, and it'll restore the flow all the way down through Troop to the Lackawanna River, right where Troop and Elephant and Jessup Troop and Elephant and Dixon City come together. So it's a long time coming. We're not there yet, but the Bureau of Abandoned Mine Reclamation has made some great progress, and we're excited to be working with them and the boroughs of Troop and Elephant on this project, and yourself and your neighbors. So I'll look forward to talking to you and getting further input from you. I'll try to give you a ring later this afternoon, if not the first part of next week.
Yeah, that's good to know, Bern. That's good to know, Bern, because a lot of the efforts up in the Lackawanna Valley and all the way down through the Wyoming Valley, from what we've seen, is that anytime we can restore water to the surface and abate the formation of the mine drainage coming from either the borehole or the Dirty A, or down in here in the valley to Solomons or Plainsville, some of these other discharges, you're reducing the cost and the long-term operation and maintenance of any future treatment system that has to come online to take care of the pollution after the fact. So if there's ways to do the restoration work and do the stream channel restoration, restoring a floodplain, putting a trout stream back on the surface that reconnects above the coal measures to downstream areas, and even up in the Lackawanna Valley, we know that that's true. That's going to be great for increasing the water quality and ecology and health of the streams that need to be restored back to the surface. But it's it's definitely no cheap undertaking, and Earth Conservancy is seeing that down here in Nanaco Creek with their restoration. That's $17.5 million, and it's only 15,000 linear stream feet that they're trying to do the restoration of, but that's what it's going to take to do the work, to do it right. So really happy to hear that project is moving forward. It's about a 3.5 miles altogether, and they're going to be doing it in several phases, but it'll bring that water to the river, and it'll create a greenway space along. There'll be a maintenance road installed as part of the construction, and we're hoping to keep that alive as a passageway and create a pathway. It will link the three boroughs, and it'll go right through the Mid Valley school campus. So it'll be a great way for kids to walk and ride bicycles to school, and we're hoping to make that happen as one of the other outcomes of the project as well. That's great. That's great.
Wonderful. Thank you. Bernie, the Lackawanna River Conservation Association has been around since 1987, almost 40 years, which is quite a feat. Can you tell us a little bit about the formation of the organization? Talk a little bit about its evolution and the keys to success as the organization has continued for nearly 40 years.
Mhm. Yeah, we're. I think the key for our success is people got involved, and people got involved in a way not to oppose something, but to support something, to encourage something, and to be proactive in doing so, and to bring people together to build a consensus for action to move forward. Um, and it was I think in large part due to the development of the National Historic Site at Steamtown with the National Park Service. Um, and I got involved with that as a volunteer. I attended a bunch of the planning meetings that the Park Service sponsored in 1985 and 1986. I was enthusiastically involved in welcoming Steamtown that came down here from Vermont. It was a private railroad collection, and we lured them down here. They were looking for a potential tourist development area that could get more tourist traffic than Bellows Falls, Vermont. So they came down here in '85, but they were a nonprofit. They were in rough condition. Their founder had passed away. He died, I think, in an airplane accident, and we ended up with this big collection of steam engines and old rusty railroad equipment. And they went into bankruptcy after the second or third year. And I've been involved as a contractor working with Jack Sweeney from the Scranton Hobby Shop. And he was involved in helping to restore the railroad station up at Pocono Summit. And we did restoration work up there on that building. And then I got talking to other railroaders and the Park Service people, and they provided input on the development of the National Historic Site. But as that was going on, other conversations were bubbling up to the surface with the idea that, hey, we have a national unit in the national park here. It's not just that facility. It can grow out into the community and look at some of the other cultural and historical aspects of the community and help to develop them, and environmental aspects too. So the idea that the railroads ran along the river, the Lackawanna Railroad ran along Roaring Brook, which I grew up on Roaring Brook, fishing, swimming in Roaring Brook when I was yay high to a grasshopper, and it was a big thing in my life. But you could swim in Roaring Brook up above the city, above Dunmore, above the junkyard, but you couldn't get down to the river because it was just filled with crap, and the sewers and everything else ran into it, and mine waste and drainage. And so the idea was that, hey, if we could create a watershed group, then that could help restore the river and get people involved in that. So we did that, and actually I wasn't the lead entity on that. A fellow named Len Altier, whose family ran a jewelry store in Scranton. Len was the guy that came up with the idea that wanted to work with Park Service and have these meetings. So I just attended the meeting and got involved as a volunteer because I had some knowledge of nonprofits from service with other nonprofits in the community. I helped get on the committee that developed the bylaws and got it incorporated, and then joined the first board as just a board member. And then Len left got into politics and wanted to run for office, so he couldn't serve as president for the second term. So I got persuaded to be president. So I was doing that work, and we were all, by that time in 1987 and 88, we were engaged with consultants developing the master plan for the river. And so I'd have to take off my nailing apron because I was still trying to run a construction business. And go to a meeting in Philadelphia or Harrisburg or Washington or somewhere here in town and put on a coat and tie. And I sort of enjoyed doing that. And there I started going back to my history with the community and a lot of the things that I remember reading and when I was a kid at the Lackawanna Historical Society. And so that all started coming back to me. And you know, it turned out that, well, I've got this intellectual resource from my education and background that could contribute to the development of the LRCA. So I enjoyed being president, and we were raising money. We were going to hire an executive director, and I got talked into doing that, and then I talked the board into hiring me. So, but it was a collective effort. I was not the lead, as I said. Len and some of the other folks that got the initiative going, and I jumped on the bandwagon. And guys like Ray Angeli, Alex Kamide, Harry Lindsay, Joe Corcoran, Joe Quinn, Reverend Monsignor Joe Quinn. There was a big cadre of folks from across the community that Tom McLean, my buddy John Gable, just saw a post on Facebook from John talking about an orange turtle down at the Old Forge borehole with iron oxide on it. So it was a large group of us, and we wanted to be open. We wanted to include everybody and get everybody, being cheerleaders for it, and rolling up our sleeves and starting a river watch program and learning about the ecology of the river, learning about the bugs, the fish, the wildlife along the river, learning about the abandoned rail lines and the junkyards and the Superfund sites and the abandoned mine sites and the combined sewer overflows and the Old Forge borehole and the other AMD drains into the river, and just get it all figured out. How can we address the bad things, take advantage of the good things, build on that tradition, that heritage, and make a positive thing happen about it. So that's sort of what the adventure was. And we continued during that in the early years in the 90s, got the Corps of Engineers involved, developed a strong partnership with the Corps of Engineers and the Heritage Authority to develop that Greenway plan. And that led to the whole Heritage Trail program getting developed. And then also the incorporation of the Rail Trail Council up in the upper watershed. We had a lot of people in the Uniondale and Forest City area that were interested in protecting the railroad, the abandoned D&H Railroad. And we were able to acquire that railroad out of the Guilford bankruptcy up there in New England, and developed it in one of the best rail trails in this part of the world right now. So all that happened over a 30-year period, and it was just one thing after another. And and then we had Riverfest, and we had an event called Canoeathon, where people actually started paddling canoes down the Lackawanna River in 1973 when the sewer plants came online, and finally the river was relatively safe enough to stick your foot in and paddle a boat in, because there was no longer sewers dumping into it directly every day. So we took that event over in the 1980s, and we had that as an annual event, and that attracted hundreds and thousands of people over the years, and introduced them to all aspects of the river, from fishing to boating to paddling and biking and hiking along the trails.
Well, Bern,
Thank you, Bernie.
LRCA
Robert, we have a question. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, let me see here. Okay. Well, let's take this question from our dear president for EPCAMR. I'd be remiss if we didn't do that. He thanks you, Bernie, for your lifetime of achievements, and he wants to know, how do you see the data centers affecting the Lackawanna River watershed at this time, and what have you been hearing up there, up valley, and how things are going, and is the local municipalities really starting to take a heavier role in both the planning and zoning efforts as these are trying to, make their way into a lot of the former mine lands and other parcels that are in the Lackawanna Valley.
Great question, Joe. I was just reading a little bit in the New York Times this morning about AI, and Americans have got some big concerns about AI and the data centers that empower it. And I think we're seeing that obviously at the local level. And the amount of proposals for the construction of data centers, there's a whole bunch of speculation going on. And I think our communities are adversely impacted by gross speculation on the part of investors that want to site these facilities here. I'm not sure that it's a good thing over the long term, as far as how much of that is sustainable. How much water do we have for the data centers? How much could we sustain? Obviously, we've got 60 to 100 million gallons a day of mine drainage. If these data centers want to develop a mine water treatment plant and help us clean up that water, then they're certainly welcome to use that water for whatever purposes, for cooling and stuff. But otherwise, if they're just going to be taking water from the headwater streams, like the headwaters of Eddy Creek or the headwaters of White Oak Run up in Archibald, or further up in the river, I don't think there's enough water to sustain that. Maybe one or two facilities, but 8 or 10, no, there's definitely not. And the impact on power, obviously, we have the electric generating plant and Venergy facility up in Jessup, and that's a steady power source, and it's tied to the Marcellus. So we have one industry that a lot of people look on with adversity, the Marcellus gas fracking, and the consumption of electric power from that facility. Well, most of it's exported out of the region anyway. So they're going to be a battle for using electricity. What are the impact on our rates going to be? I don't think we know that. So I've got a lot of concerns about it, and I think we're a day late and a dollar short as far as our zoning and protection. But on the other hand, we do have some abandoned mine sites. We do have some abandoned mine water. The treatment and proper restoration of mine sites could, in the right context, facilitate the development of a good data center that would have the sustainability as far as treated mine water as a coolant, and maybe electricity to be generated at a cogen plant. So across the anthracite region, I think there are locations that could sustain a responsible number of data centers. But how much is enough? And right now, this is a huge technological change for humanity and the planet. We're at a stage in our development as a species on this planet that is crucial. It goes back to the development of fire and the development of writing and speech and communications by our species, and then the development of metallurgy, the Bronze Age, and the transition of the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. So we're at one of those. This is a tipping point, along with the climate change that's happening. So it's really, really interesting. I think we need a firmer hand on the tiller to control where the ship of state is moving, and I don't think we have that right now on the national level. So what its impacts are going to be, we're going to have to slug it out, and I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I agree, Bern. I think we're going to need to keep a close eye on that. EPCAMR will as well, because a lot of the work that still remains to be done, looking at the mine pools and the water use and how that water chemistry and temperature and flows could be changed over time, or something that really need to be looked at, in particular in the upper Lackawanna, where that cold water fishery needs to remain a cold water fishery. Yeah. And if there are some temperature changes that could exacerbate the dropping out of metals, potentially that could very much change the entire landscape of that recreational, hotbed of trout fishery in the Lackawanna that we all enjoy so much.
Yeah,
so, and that goes for across the region as well.
Yeah.
And we'll be coming out with a report in February too that Frank Syndico, one of our staff, is working on. That's done some tremendous research out of our Department of Energy grant that we had in northern Schuylkill County at the Maria mine pool location, and ideas around solar, alternative energy, geothermal potential. And Frank has put together a tremendous report and done some research that will be releasing soon that will give a lot of people some more insight, I think, here coming shortly after the new year here. So look forward to that too.
Yeah, I am, Bobby. And, I think all of those things that you just mentioned, the idea that, we have a post-industrial environment that we're living in, but there is still tremendous, it helped to kindle the Industrial Revolution in the United States. This is a major element of it from this area, from the anthracite. And all these sites, they're out there. They can still be a part of the new economy going into this century and into the next couple centuries. But we have to do it right. And we need to bring these on, and we need to be open-minded about it. We need to welcome wind. We need to welcome solar. And we need to welcome that change. And we need to get away from fossil fuels. We still have to make a transition. Fossil fuels still have a place. And it has to be a mix. And I hate to say it, but I think nuclear still has a place as well. I think that we need some transitions there and some improvements there. But we need to address all that.
I think for sake of time here, Bernard, we'd like to ask you about some of your recent work and the white paper that you're working on that's related to the Old Forge borehole, our sort of public enemy number one down there in the lower 3 miles that impacts the lower 3 miles of the Lackawanna River and Old Forge, and how that kind of came about, and a little bit on the construction and why it was drilled and constructed in the first place. And App Cameron and RIPA, we're proud to fund that research through one of our recent mini grant awards that we've been giving out for a number of years now, almost 15 years, and giving you the time necessary to do some digging into that history of the borehole. So what's been going on there with your work?
Yeah. Well, it's really fascinating, Bobby. It's something I've been interested in for a long time. I think I may have mentioned in an offhanded way to Tara, when she first started coming on board a couple of years ago. I wish I had time to do some research on the borehole and get all the stuff together about it so we could cite chapter and verse on it. I had general understanding of the big idea of the big issues, what it was doing and why it was necessary to drill it. So Tara was speaking with you and with Bodie Morin at the Anthracite Museum, and started talking about the borehole, and the idea came about. Gee, wouldn't we need to have an exhibit about the borehole? You heard that we had discovered the plug from the core drilling, and so we had a meeting at the museum a few months back, and your suggestion that we look to the RIPA grant program as a catalyst to get the idea started. So the thesis is we're doing this white paper research program on the borehole, and then that will serve as the basis to help us as a community develop an interpretive exhibit at the Anthracite Museum. Because we have a lot of history of the mining industry in Pennsylvania in the Anthracite Museum. We have a lot of that in our heads. But the demise of the industry from the 1950s into the 60s and 70s, when it all fell apart up here, it's recently happened, and it's been documented in the primary sources in journalism and in the state records. but nobody's quite pulled all that together. Bob Walensky has done some terrific work on the assessment of the Knox mine disaster, which was the coup de grace that everybody sees as the symbolic event that ended the industry. But there was a lot underground, a lot behind the scenes that went into that, and was really bigger than just that. So we thought, well, let's pull it together. Let's get that information out there so the public could see it. So I started some of the research into the newspaper archives, and it's validated a lot of what I knew. It's provided me a couple of interesting bits and surprises. For instance, originally they were contemplating drilling two big bad boreholes, both 42 inches. One was going to be drilled pretty much where the Duryea Breach is located, and the other one they were going to drill down right on the riverbank at the Susquehanna in Piston, where the Butler Mine Tunnel comes into the river. And in the meantime, nature took its own course. The Central and Number 9 mine pool surcharged and broke the ground open where the Marcy vein had been surface strip mined under what had been a canal basin that was part of the historic Pennsylvania Canal Works down there in Duryea, and that created the Duryea Breach. And so mine water just started flowing out of the ground, and there was a nearby mine shaft, the Phoenix shaft, that mine water had been coming out that shaft as well. But the flow of that water caused the shaft to collapse, and then it further backed up, and then it broke the ground open. And that happened in 60 and 61. And so it was right about the time after Knox, all the mine companies were reassessing because they had anticipated Knox. And if you go back and look at the Bureau of Mines bulletins in the late 40s, Stephen Ash correctly predicted that there was a high potential for a mining accident that would rupture the bed of the Susquehanna River or one of the other large tributaries and cause a huge inundation of the underground workings in the Wyoming Valley. And that was a big concern. And finally, it happened at Knox. And the federal response was, well, we'll give you pumps, but you got to, pay the electric bill and pump the water out yourself. And it was interesting, there's no honor among thieves. One of the things I learned was that there was an offer by the feds to provide more pumps up in the northern field here in the Lackawanna Basin, and down around Wilkes-Barre. But the anthracite industry operators up here, Glen Alden, Hudson Coal, Pennsylvania Coal, Pagnati, Moffett, Penn Anthracite, some of the other smaller ones, they were saying to their congressman, well, we need subsidies to run the pumps and pay for the pumping charges. Since 1957, you had the economic intersection where the cost of pumping exceeded the price per ton on the open market. Well, if you were operating in Hazleton, you were at the top of the anticline, you're pumping, you didn't have to pump. You just had to drain it by gravity. You were draining out the Jetto tunnel or the some of the other tunnels off the sides of the mountain in Hazleton. And the same went for some of the other anticlines and even some of the synclines that had drained by gravity down in the middle and southern fields. So the operators down there weren't interested in paying a royalty tax to help fund the pumping of their competitors up here in the northern field. So they couldn't make that happen. So one by one, the companies that were still operating said, hey, if I go out of business, here's the key to my pump house. You run my pumps, you pay the electric bill, I'll see you, goodbye. So one by one, Hudson Coal went out, Pennsylvania Coal went out, Glen Alden went out. Everybody went out. Moffett was the last one operating. They were operating Hudson, Pennsylvania, and Glen Alden's pumps in the Lackawanna Basin. They couldn't do it. So they sent a letter to the governor in November 1st, 1960. We're turning off the pumps. That's it. We're done. Now, so they and some of the smaller operators were still operating above where the level of inundation was expected. And so they were still operating up along the outcrops in Carbondale and in Oliphant and Troop, et cetera. There was still some viability for the industry, but at a much smaller scale. So they went from 5,000 people employed to maybe 500 in the course of 60, 61, 62. So all that happened, and then between November 1st, 1960 and through 1961, the mine filled up, and it started surcharging, broke open the ground at Duryea, and started flooding people's basements in Pittston Junction and Duryea and Music, and saturating the groundwater, causing all sorts of subsidences up all through Scranton in the Mid Valley, and the idea was that, hey, we got to relieve the pressure. So the state came in, the mining engineers from the Bureau of Mines in Mineral Industries, and they said, well, here's where we do it. But then when the ground broke open at Duryea, that changed their thinking, and they said, okay, well, the other spot, we'll drill a borehole at Old Forge, and we'll just need to drill one right at the top of the anticline where it crests out in the riverbed, and we'll drain the basin under Scranton and the Mid Valley from that one point. So that was the decision that was made, and so between April and September of 1962, the Department of General Services of Pennsylvania contracted with the Ezra Stipp Construction Company of Scranton, and they drilled that 42-inch borehole and put the appurtenances in there at Old Forge. So that was the big deal, and there's also some confrontation with the angling community. Fishermen said, "Hey, you're going to kill all the fish." There was a big fish kill from some Glen Alden pumping down in Nanticoke earlier that year. So there was some environmental controversy about it. But interestingly, the spokesman for the Department of Mines and Mineral Industries was saying, "Well, what's more important, the fish in the river or the stability of people's foundations of their homes and basements, et cetera?" So that argument won the day, and the borehole got drilled, and it's been polluting the river to a major degree ever since 1962. So we think it's the largest abandoned mine drain point source, definitely in the Chesapeake Bay region, but perhaps also on the whole continent of North America. So it's a big deal, and getting it resolved is still, I think, we're going to be continuing to have some dialogue with public and private sector partners about that.
Yeah, Bernie, we're running out of time, and we like to close each episode with one piece of advice that our leaders have to offer the nonprofit organizations with respect to organizational capacity and sustainability. Do you have any words of wisdom to share with us?
I think you have to be persistent. Don't give up. Never give up. And build consensus. So I think those are the two things: persistence and consensus. Always go back to the source and make sure everybody's on board.
Thank you.
Well, Bernie, we could go on
Thank
and
you.
on for hours, I'm sure. But for this particular episode of the podcast, we really appreciate everything that you've talked about so far, and we want to thank you for joining us today. And
right.
we're thankful to have you as a friend, a mentor, and a partner in Abandoned Mine Reclamation. And we want people to tune in every Friday of the month here at 12 noon for a new episode on the Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles. We have some interesting guests lined up here in the future months ahead. So if you mark your calendars for next month, Friday, February 4th at noon, we're going to be interviewing Eric Cavazza, the former DEP Bureau of Abandoned Mine Reclamation Director and former Cambria District Mining Manager, who's now the Vice President of Legacy Coal Reclamation for Tetra Tech. So it'll be interesting to hear some of his thoughts and his experiences over his career as well. So we really appreciate you doing the interview with us today, and I wish we had a lot more time to talk about what Tara is doing and going to be doing in the future and filling some shoes there, but we'll get her on another interview in the coming months ahead. So we'll talk to her as well.
I'd just like to throw one last word in that, get everybody to join us. We're having Shiverfest and Paddle the Lackawanna in the snow and ice on Saturday, January 17th.
Good plug, Vern. And there's a little link for it. So thank you.
Okay. Great, Robert. Thank you. Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you. Also, a reminder that we still have advertising sponsorship opportunities remaining. So if you see our sponsorship levels in the App Camera store, check it out. Thank you all. Thank you, Bernie.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Bernie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.